Welcome back to Reunited States, the podcast where we aim to bring back civil discourse to our national dialogue. From Los Angeles, California, my name is Tyler Ehrig.
And fresh off a dominant victory in fantasy football over Tyler's team, from Manchester, New Hampshire, I am Jesse Saywell. How did that feel, by the way, getting totally trounced this past weekend?
Whatever, man. I'm 0 for 2 now, and I'm really frustrated about it because I was quite literally the last game. Before this, I was winning until I think the last day of the week.
Yeah.
I was in the lead.
Yeah.
This match was much less back and forth. I think you kind of just destroyed me.
I had a good week this week.
Pretty much.
But no, I
can't do. I looked at my team. I was like, "There's not much I can do."
I had to get you back for last year. You got me at the end of last year, pretty bad. So. And
I'll get you again.
Yeah. We'll see you later in the season. Anyway, thank you all so much for joining us as always. We want to start off addressing the elephant in the room. We talked about it last week because it was literally happening while we were recording. But of course, there's been fallout from the Charlie Kirk assassination of last week. And we're not just going to talk about kind of what we touched on last week. I really want to talk about the fallout and the reaction and what that means, right? Because
it seems like no one listened to us.
Yeah, definitely no one listened to us because... I think the most frustrating thing, and many of you have reached out, and I appreciate the dialogue. I do. And some of the dialogue I didn't think was especially fair, if we're being honest. We got things. I certainly got things on social media. People were saying that we were attacking left-wing activists, and I just said, where? Can you point to any specific thing that either of us have said or posted or anything? And then they couldn't, and then, we had some people apologize. I appreciate that. We had some other people that were, angry or whatever, saying that, condemning violence is privilege. That's a really interesting argument that I would never deny that I have privilege, but I don't think that condemning violence is an exhibition of that. But look, it's been an interesting week, and what we said last week immediately was that we all need to be kind of taking a look in the mirror, right, about how we engage with each other and the temperature of where we are as a society. And I know that people take that and they're like, but the right is so much worse. And if you look statistically at it, I would never deny that the right has been responsible, certainly in recent years, but really for a very long time, the right has been responsible for more violent deaths in this country of this nature.
Unless you're J.D. Vance and you apparently think the opposite.
I think I posted where he said it was a statistical fact that the left was more... apparently statistical fact coming from the vice president translates to total bullshit. But... yeah, no, the response to this has been crazy, and it's been crazy in large part on multiple sides. Now, I want to say that it has been much worse coming from the right, and that is fair to say. But I have also been disturbed by some of the stuff that I've seen on the left, on social media, and in my interactions with people who seem to want to make an excuse for this. Like it is somehow okay because Charlie Kirk said things that offend you, or criticized or scared you. He promoted an ideology that potentially could negatively impact you, that somehow that justifies him being murdered, okay? And then there was the kind of insane back and forth that we just kept getting of like, no, he's actually conservative. No, he's a liberal. No, he's a Nick Fuentes supporter. Like, it has become pretty clear.
That's hilarious.
This was an argument that was being made, was that he was a Nick Fuentes supporter, and...
I've seen it by social media influencers that I actually respect. Like left-leaning. I was watching their content, and they were saying the exact same thing. They also were sneaking in some falsities about Breonna Taylor, which is interesting because we talked about this not too long ago.
Yeah, I think Alex Johnson talked about that, right? Yes.
Yes. Exactly. Well, this influencer that I was watching, he was saying the Nick Fuentes stuff. He was very confidently not saying my opinion is, he was declaring it. That this man was a further than far right individual, Tyler Robinson, which, by the way, not just for a second, I have never heard my name said so many times in a single news cycle in my life. I hate it. I hate it so much. Anyway.
I think the real concern is not about people on the left or people on the right. I think it's people named Tyler.
Oh, no.
And that's what we need to be worried about right now.
It surprised me to see how confidently some of these influencers were saying these things, saying that somehow he is like the furthest of far right people, that he shot Charlie Kirk because he wasn't right enough, which there is no evidence of. There's nothing points. In fact, there's more evidence that points to the opposite.
Yeah, it was pure speculation.
There is more evidence that points to the opposite being potentially
constantly
true with the text messages that were released. It is not, obviously,
yes.
Neither of those things are definitive, but there is more evidence now leaning that he was an opponent of Charlie's, as opposed to someone who didn't think he was conservative enough or whatever. That doesn't make any sense at all.
And he's certainly looking at these text messages. I mean, let's be on the surface here. He was in a romantic relationship with someone who was transitioning from male to female, right? We know that to be true now. And we also know that he actively talked about his dad having gone diehard MAGA since the election or whatnot. This was not a MAGA person. And it doesn't matter. This is what I kept saying to people. It does not matter what side of the political spectrum he is on. It doesn't. Because, and I keep asking people,
it shouldn't.
Why?
Is actually what it should be.
Right, it shouldn't matter.
It shouldn't matter.
It shouldn't matter. But why do you so badly want him to be on the other side? Because you know that this was wrong. You know in your heart of heart that this was wrong, and it reflects badly on you, and there is a belief system of many on the left that we don't do things like this. We could never do this. We're not violent people. Well, we are. As I said, I posted a piece that got quite a bit of traction on social media. You know, Mike Johnson came out and said, this isn't who we are. Yes, it is. As a society, this is who we are, because we have decided that we hate each other this much. And does that mean we're all killers? No. But we have all, and I say this as somebody who is also guilty of this, we have all contributed to the level of hate that exists. And it is fair to say that many people on the left are terrified for their safety and that they don't hate people on the right for the same reasons. But the hatred has gone too far in many situations. We have gotten out of control. We have not been able to control this level of hatred and vitriol. We're not talking to each other. We're not willing to engage with each other. We're not remembering or acknowledging each other's humanity. And when you forget to acknowledge someone's humanity, that's when violence occurs, right? And that's why we're getting into this point where, things are getting worse. Now, to the credit of the leaders on the left versus the leaders on the right, they have unanimously come out and condemned this. You haven't heard anyone in the Democratic Party, for the most part, and people are going to pick out random, spokespeople, whatever, that, they're going to take a quote out of context. Chuck Schumer didn't come out here, Hakeem Jeffries didn't come out, AOC did not come out and say, oh, well, Charlie Kirk, deserved to die, or something like that.
There were no jokes that were made. There was not even a dismissal, a dismissive tone. It was, of the people who spoke, it was honest, and it was, it was a denouncement of violence, as it should be, as they should do. Yes. I think...
We didn't see that from the right, though.
Of course we didn't see that from the right, because...
We didn't see that from the right when Melissa Hortman was shot, the Speaker of the House in Minnesota was shot and killed.
Pelosi's husband was attacked, of course.
No, we saw them make fun of it. We saw them actively make fun of it. And the worst part of what's happened in the last week has been Donald Trump. Go figure. But the person that has stoked these flames the worst has been the President of the United States, who sat in the Oval Office and said that it's left-wing violence is the problem. He has actively gone on TV.
Yes, I would say him and Vance together had the worst response I can even fathom. So much so that I think I told you this after Trump's speech, and this is an assumption. I don't know if this will happen. I hope this does not happen. But when I heard that speech, my first thought was, I would not be surprised if tomorrow he signed an executive order banning certain types of speech against specifically the far right. Now, he didn't do that, and he hasn't done that yet. But if he did, I really would not be surprised.
But Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, basically said that, and she's taken some flack, and I'm glad that she's had to walk it back, because even some people on the right started to complain about that. But Pam Bondi basically said that she was going to look at hate speech and ways of targeting hate speech from the left. And let's just be clear, like, whether you like it or not, hate speech is protected by the First Amendment. Now, threats, those are different things. But hate speech is protected by the First Amendment. You are allowed to voice your hatred of someone in this country.
Right. And J.D. Vance, in conjunction with that, said publicly that he wants employers to fire any employee that celebrated Charlie Kirk's death in some way, shape, or form. That's also very illegal to fire someone. I mean, like, that's against employment law. That is protected speech. It's free speech. You can be an asshole if you want. That's the beauty of this country, is that if you want to be kind of an ass, you can be an ass, and that is a legally protected right. And so if you want to celebrate it, no matter how we may feel about that, you can do that. You have that privilege, that right.
And let's just call it what it is. That's cancel culture, right? For the far right. Am I wrong? Like, is that not textbook cancel culture? That's what they have been raving about for years relating to the left. And honestly, rightfully so. Rightfully so. The left owns part of cancel culture. Now, the right also owns part of cancel culture, because they are snowflakes as well. Let's be very clear. But that's cancel culture that he's actively promoting. And also, okay, Mr. Vance, you are upset about, you want us to report to employers when employees, trivialize violence. You're the president of the Senate. As vice president, you serve as president of the Senate. You oversee the Senate. So I guess that means you're the boss, then, of Senator Mike Lee, who made jokes about Melissa Hortman getting shot just a couple months ago. Can I report that to you, J.D. Vance? So the hypocrisy is off the chain here. It's unbelievable. And this insinuation that somehow the left is one more dangerous, but also that is the only ones that are dangerous. I will openly accept that the left is dangerous in some capacity. There is some aspect of the left that clearly is participating in violence.
Though.
Exactly.
That's just because people are dangerous. That has nothing to do. You said it earlier, and I'm going to bring this back. This has nothing to do with your political leaning.
Of course.
People commit acts of violence all the time against other people, against things, against institutions, against whatever. This happens no matter what your political leaning is. Does political leaning have an effect on certain crimes in America because of the way how society's progressed? Yeah, absolutely. But the act of committing a violence is not being committed by a philosophy. It's not being committed by a political view. It's being committed by a person.
And it is, and that's why we're talking about political violence, though, right? Like, when it is motivated by politics, and that is increasingly something that we're seeing, that's a problem, right? Like, we can all acknowledge that that's an issue in our society, and that's what we're trying to address. Like, the idea that this sort of violence shouldn't be motivated by politics. But you're right. Like, people commit these crimes in the same way they're like, guns don't kill people, people kill people. The reality, to me, looking at this situation, is that we've talked about Donald Trump wanting an excuse to militarize and to go after political opponents and go after these groups, he clearly saw this as an opportunity to do that. And whether that's going to be effective or not, I'm not sure. But he and Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, the head of the FBI, who has had a bad week, and what a moron that guy is. Let's just be very clear. This man is wildly unqualified to be head of the FBI, posted a variety of things saying a suspect. He tweeted that a suspect was in custody when he wasn't. I mean, like, he was misinformation central as the head of the FBI while the investigation was going on. So let's just be clear about that.
Cory Booker had that exchange with Kash Patel, in which he said, "You won't have a job for very long." And I think he's true. I think he's right.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, you never know, because Trump is more loyal now than he used to be, because he doesn't have to feel the pressure in the way that he did before. But anyway, I mean, these people toning all of this up, like, they are taking advantage of Charlie Kirk's death. And I'm not even saying that they don't care, because I do believe J.D. Vance liked Charlie Kirk. I believe that Kash Patel liked Charlie Kirk. I believe that Donald Trump liked Charlie Kirk. Like, I think that they were friends. I'm not going to deny that relationship or the humanity of the experience, because they did lose somebody. But they, among many other people, are very much using this as an opportunity to advance their political aspirations, which include cracking down on the left. And that should be concerning to all of us. What else is concerning is Kash Patel said that I'll see you in Valhalla, which does somebody want to tell Kash Patel that Valhalla isn't especially welcoming to people like him based on the traditional stories of Valhalla? But I don't think he knows
also
that.
Also a very anti-Catholic, anti-Christian thing to say for someone who's kind of like God first. That is a... You do not want to say that if you're a God-fearing man. That's like
these people
big,
are
big
so
no-no.
Weird. Like, Tim Waltz was right, man. Like, these people are weird. Like, and the problem is they're also in charge of everything, and they are dangerous. They are actively being dangerous. And I know that people are going to be like, "Oh, you said they're dangerous. Now I'm not saying go out and shoot them. Don't do that. Violence is not the answer to this. That's their answer to this. They're the ones that want to send in troops and crack down and throw people in prison and all of that. This can't be a situation where we start, shooting these people as a response. Like, that is a problem. And the fact that younger people in particular seem to be much more open to the idea of violence being used as a means of addressing political issues. If you look at the statistics, it's a lot higher percentage of young people who think that in some cases violence is an appropriate response. I'm just going to say that unless somebody is actively trying to harm you directly, unless you are actively committing self-defense as defined by the law, violence is never the answer, right? Never the answer. And so it's a disturbing trend in society, but now we've got this thing, Tyler. Have you seen the Marjorie Taylor Greene post where she calls for a national divorce?
No, I don't think I did.
So Marjorie Taylor Greene tweeted out in the aftermath of Charlie Kirk, quote, "There is nothing left to talk about with the left. They hate us. To be honest, I want a peaceful national divorce. Our country is too far gone and too far divided, and it's no longer safe for any of us," end quote. That's among several other things that she said. She also said, they assassinated our nice guy who actually talked to them peacefully debating ideas.
Nice guy, yeah, that's cute.
Quote, "Then millions on the left celebrated and made clear they want all of us dead," end quote.
Yikes, okay. Well, never mind what I said a few weeks ago about her seeing the light now with the Epstein stuff. Yeah, never mind. She just flipped way back to the other end again.
Yeah, I mean, she continued on with, "I will pray for the left, but personally I want nothing to do with them." Democrats are hardened in their beliefs and will flip the switch back as soon as they have power. And if you are expecting Republicans to fight against evil with the power they currently possess and end this once and for all, you are going to be extremely disappointed. Government is not... It shouldn't say government is not the answer. Government is not answer. God is. Look, I get that...
Not if you're Kash Patel.
I get that Valhalla is.
Multiple gods. Heresy.
I get that Marjorie Taylor Greene represents a fringe faction, but it's not that fringe anymore. And we're hearing this from a lot of people right now, talking about a national divorce, about civil war, about a split. We're hearing it on the left right now. The news has come out that the left, there's a Democratic Governors Association in which they're meeting regularly, and they are talking about, quote, soft secession, which essentially is something that you and I talked about several months ago on the pod. Well, we're not sure about whether that's viable or not, and I don't even know if we talked about this on the pod. We may have just had this conversation via text, but we were talking about whether it's plausible that, essentially certain groups of states could choose to leave and either join another country or form their own country or govern themselves entirely and refuse to pay. And the challenge that I just want to restate about this, and this is my personal opinion, and I'm curious to yours, Tyler, and how this resolves itself. The challenge to this is, one, I don't think the right would let the blue states leave. They make too much money. California pays for Texas to be cheap to live in, right? Like, Texas is a cheap state to live in spite of the fact that it's a big state, because California pays so much more towards it, and it allows Texas to have, lower tax rates, right? Like Florida, same thing. Like, Florida certainly makes money, but it is a cheaper state because it can be, right? It's getting this federal funding. All of these red states that take so much more from the federal government than what they give back, there's no way they're going to be okay, especially with the power they have right now. There's no way they're going to let these states leave peacefully. I don't see that happening. I know that the New England states would love to do that. We would love to just separate off. I don't think it'd be a good idea, but we'd love to just do that. Tyler, what do you think?
I agree with you in that I think officials of red states, representatives of red states, governors, Senate members, people who understand the complexities of interstate law and what factors into the national economy as a result of interstate relationships, they will see that right away, and they'll say, this is not a good idea for us. This is going to tank us. I do think that gives a lot more power to these blue states in those situations. If it were to come to the table and be discussed, I think blue states would have quite a lot of sway when discussing things amicably because of how much power they would have, and basically saying, yeah, we can leave and you're fucked, or we can come to an agreement, whatever that might be. That gives them power in that sense, but I think when you're talking about whether or not this transition, if it were to happen, would be peaceful or not, I don't see it being like the start of a war, in the sense where I just don't think the everyday person understands all the complexities and all of the consequences that are going to happen as a result of blue states leaving. They are going to see, like, on the surface level, oh, the liberals want to leave. Good. Fuck them. They can leave. I bet you anything that's going to be their initial response. And they will feel repercussions much, much later down the road. But they're not going to be thinking about those things in the moment. At least not in my opinion. I don't think they're going to be thinking about things or realizing the economic consequences of California leaving the United States if you're some random guy in Texas. And so when we're talking about the possibility of violence, of civil war or whatever, I don't see people taking up arms just because it was announced or it started to happen, because I don't think they're going to have the motivation to fight with their life for something that they don't understand or recognize the consequences of. it'll be something that is solely kept within the minds and discussions of people in power, basically, representatives and governors. That's my opinion on it.
Right, but what about, I'm more thinking about the federal government, right? Like, the federal government is under the control of Donald Trump, the military, the National Guard. He's already shown this. Like, you think that if California said we're going to leave the union, that Trump would be like, let him go? Like, I just don't. I don't think he would do that. He thinks of this country as his, and that's a huge weapon of his. Like in his mind, like California is a huge economic component of his country. And I can't imagine that he would ever be okay because the people in the federal government know that California pays all these taxes. They don't want California to leave. They want California to be silent, right? They want
Trump
them
isn't
to be
going
there
to
and
send the
stay
National
silent.
Guard and tell them, shoot these people if they leave. Inside a war.
You don't think that he would
might send them? Yes, he might send them, but he's not going to tell them to start gunning people down.
You really?
I don't think so. I think
he's already requested for the National Guard to shoot unarmed protesters. Like he wanted that in his first term, and Pete Hegseth refused to deny that Trump had asked him to do that in this term. So you're telling me that if California decides to illegally, because there is no legal basis for a state to secede. Let's just be clear, that was established in the Civil War the first time. There is no legal basis for it. You're telling me that if California decided to secede, Trump wouldn't send the U.S. military in to try and succumb California? He wouldn't love the opportunity to send in a militarized state and declare war on Newsom or whoever is governor of California at that time?
I think sending them in is one thing, and he has already done that, and he will continue to do that. But I don't see him declaring war, enacting, like firing missiles, shooting guns, in the sense against. I don't even know who it would be. Would it be against the California military? Would it be against the people?
Yeah,
like,
I mean, essentially,
would he call a strike team to attack Newsom's fucking mansion or something? Like, I have no idea what would that even look like? Like, what's your target?
I think the target would be, I think California would state in that situation, they would pass some sort of thing where they'd say, we're now a separate entity, we're not going to pay taxes, and we're going to self-govern, and we're not going to give the federal government a dime because we don't get anything from them. And at which point in time, the federal government would send in troops and take over the government. They would basically declare a state of martial law in California, and you would have either a resistance force, you would have people. This is what I've said for years, that if this happened, the military, members of the military would have to choose, in the same way they did in the first Civil War. They'd have to choose whether they fight for their state or whether they fight for their country. And that would be an interesting thing. I don't want that to happen. Of course, I don't want that to happen. I think this is a terrible thing. But the idea that there could be some sort of peaceful, like these states could just leave and Trump's going to be like, yeah, it's fine, you can go. You don't like me, you should get out. I just don't see him doing that. It would be one thing if it was like Vermont, but California, New York, like his home state of New York, you think that he's ever going to let New York leave the country? Like, I just don't see that happening. Like, and I don't see the conservatives ever allowing that to happen now that they have power. Like, if they were not in power, I could absolutely see them wanting to leave and separate and whatnot. But the fact that they have the government under their control and that the electoral map looks favorable for them going forward, like, all of these things, I just can't imagine that they're ever going to, that they would ever be okay just letting their cash cows leave, right? So maybe it wouldn't be a war, but it certainly would have to end in some sort of military takeover of the government, right? Which might as well be declaring war over a state, right?
Right, and I think that's, I guess that's the thing, right? It's that would be the only way that they'd be able to stop this from happening. granted, it is, like you said, it's not legal in the first place, but barring that, because we're well beyond what's legal and illegal at this point with the actions taken by these people in power. So barring that, it goes to show that the only way they'd be able to stop them would be to send the military to literally occupy Sacramento or something. The capital.
And how would California
and because
react
they
to
wouldn't
that?
be able to get them any other way, because there's nothing they could do. Like, they would have to send in people, and I don't know. It still seems like a bit far for me to think about Trump sending the literal military to start a war with another state, to literally start shooting down. Again, I don't even know what target they would have. Like, I was going to start gunning down like random people on the street. Like,
I think it would be more arresting people, and I think that the actions taken thus far in Los Angeles, Washington D.C., what's about to happen in Memphis, what's about to happen in Chicago, like, this is the prelude to that. This is the like show of strength of like, if you guys don't get your shit together, you can't stop me from sending in troops, right? You can't stop me from taking over your governments, right? And that's what I worry about. Like, we would have been having this same discussion about the things that he's already done a year ago, right? Like, you would be saying the similar things, I feel like, right? It would be like...
I would be, again, like, we said this not too long ago, that there is a naivete that I've even shown in believing that Trump wouldn't do the things that he then did some months later or years later. So I recognize that I'm being proven wrong left and right now with this man, and it's frustrating because it means you're being proven right.
Honestly, bro, let's switch places. You can start saying, with your luck, you can start, having the doomsday predictions. I'll be super optimistic, and with my luck, maybe things will get better, right?
If that can happen, I will secede every fantasy football match we ever have for the rest of the time. if I can make that a thing,
I would be more than happy to be wrong more often than I've been in the last year or so. And of course, it happens, and it's not, in many ways, maybe it's just my general pessimism. And my general cynicism and lack of faith in where we stand. But yeah, I mean, so many of these things have gone so wrong, and Trump is a largely amoral individual, right? I don't know if we have ever had an amoral individual in the office. We may have. We may have had an amoral individual in the office of the presidency, but we've never had an entirely amoral political party backing them up, right?
What's important is that we highlight the importance of rhetoric coming from people of power, and what we need to, and how to like digest that, and what to do about that. And unfortunately, what to do about that, there's nothing we can really do about that besides ensuring that we are not perpetrating that same rhetoric, or doing an equally or inciting equally negative rhetoric that's on the flip side. Could not agree more. That's so I think we can do. Yeah. We have to ignore it and denounce it when people use this rhetoric, because rhetoric thrives when people repeat it. One person can say one thing, and if nobody cares, then no matter how hateful that thing was, it doesn't matter. But when people start repeating it, when people start bringing attention to it, now it matters. Now that person has a megaphone. Now that person's on a soapbox. Yeah. Now that person has elevation. And that's what they want, clearly. They want to say these inflammatory things because they're going to get picked up, and they're going to get repeated on news stations. People are going to start repeating it as if it's gospel. People are going to retaliate the way we have seen being retaliated. And this is why I have, as much as I agree with you that, we have to absolutely denounce the people on the left who are celebrating Charlie Kirk's death. No death should be celebrated like that. But I've said this last week. I do recognize why.
Oh, of course.
Like
of course.
I recognize why. I recognize that it is very much like when you feel attacked, you have the impulse of attacking back. That's why it's called fight or flight, right? Because you either flee or you fight. There is no other option. And most people right now are now deciding, I'm going to fight. And unfortunately, that means fighting with rhetoric and using equally toxic rhetoric to combat toxic rhetoric. I've talked to a lot of people who are like, this is the only way now. Like, they didn't listen to us before, so now this is the only way that we are going to like reach them. I mean, hell, that's debatably, right? Suspectedly, that was this guy, Tyler Robinson's motive, right? When you were looking at the text messages that allegedly said that he said, some kind of hate can't be reasoned with, I believe was the verbiage he used. But again, like, that sort of mentality breeds violence, it breeds poisonous rhetoric, and in the worst situations, it breeds a Tyler Robinson. Someone who feels like this is the only way. And so I feel it's our responsibility here to reiterate, because we say this all the time, but reiterating now more than ever, that is not the only way.
Yeah.
You should never be at a point where you're like, the only option now is to do something heinous, to commit a crime.
Yeah, I mean, I say to people regularly, because they take what we say about like bridging the gaps and talking over, it's like, you want me to go talk to a white supremacist and I'm a person of color and that would no, I don't. I would never advocate that you go talk to a white supremacist. I don't advocate that people put themselves in situations where they are
I mean, I think there's situations
Sure.
where you can, where you should,
Sure.
but yes, not at the risk of your life
safety.
or your health.
What I ask is that you can distinguish between when things are unsafe and when they are uncomfortable. And those are two very different things, and that we have gotten very bad at distinguishing between those two things. And so I get it. I got a lot of people that were like, I just breathed a sigh of relief when Charlie Kirk was killed. And on the surface, I understand that. If you feel like he is promoting an ideology and has expanded an ideology that has endangered your life, I understand this sense of relief. The problem is, killing him only makes this worse. It's only going to exacerbate the problem. Also, it's morally wrong. Let's just state that. It's morally wrong to kill someone. I don't believe in the death penalty. I actively don't believe that anyone should be deciding who lives and who dies. But off of that, this is not going to silence that voice. If we have learned anything from Rush Limbaugh to Bill O'Reilly to Tucker Carlson and now Charlie Kirk, like, there will always be an angry conservative man willing to step into that void. Okay? Like, you're
and
never...
they'll be angrier.
And they're going to be angrier. And they're going to be more hostile.
Because that's what we've seen with the people that you literally just described.
Yes.
Increasing anger, increasing hate, which with each person that replaced the other, it literally got worse.
And people are going to die because of what happened to Charlie Kirk. Other people are going to die. Innocent people are going to die because of this. Other people are going to suffer. People are going to be arrested. People are going to be targeted because of what happened to Charlie Kirk. It's not going to make the world a better place. I don't believe that. This is not a situation where, people go back in time and they're like, what if somebody had killed Hitler or whatever? Like, there were plenty of other people beyond Hitler who were involved in that movement that were responsible for the murder of 6 million plus Jews, right? And, the devastation wrought across Europe, right? Like, it's never just one person, and killing just one person will never solve a situation, right? If anything, it martyrs that sort of mentality and that sort of person. So, like, this idea that violence can solve anything is not. It's misguided. It's never been shown to be effective, literally ever. And so, and that goes both ways. I mean, did Martin Luther King getting assassinated stop the movement or the beliefs and his legacy? No,
of course not. It gave it a launch pad, actually.
Yeah, it actually brought more people together long term than it did otherwise. There was no more means of criticizing MLK for some of his personal exploits, which I love MLK. Anybody knows he's one of my idols. Flawed human being, right? But we don't ever talk about that because he didn't live long enough for us to talk about that, of him to be brought down. Charlie Kirk now is being glorified by a significant portion of the population that didn't even know who he was, now thinks that he was like some truth teller and some, whatever. Like, if you really care about opposing somebody's opinions, regardless of where you are on the spectrum, left, right, whether you're, in favor of progress or opposed to progress, right? Like, killing somebody doesn't help your cause. The perpetrators... It never does.
Like we said last week, it only immortalizes it.
Yeah.
That's all it does.
And the perpetrators need to be held responsible. And speaking on perpetrators, I want to ask you about what's going on with both Tyler Robinson as well as another perpetrator of crime from the left, Luigi Mangione, as there was a new development in that case this week. Tell us more. You're the expert on these issues, on the legal stuff. I want to know.
Well, not my side of the law, but I am a little bit of a nerd about it. So we had some recent news drop about Luigi Mangione, and this is relevant and very directly related to the Tyler Robinson soon-to-be case as well. But if you haven't heard, Luigi Mangione, he had a litany of charges weighed against him, including second-degree murder and some other stuff that's stacked on top of that. One of which was a charge of domestic terrorism, which is, to say the least, ridiculous. But so a judge, the judge who's going to preside over Mangione's case, recently came out and said that he would be throwing out the domestic terrorism charge. Now, this by itself is not surprising. It's not surprising to me, and it shouldn't be surprising to you. Domestic terrorism is a very specific charge. You have to prove that the person who is charged of it acted with intention to harm the fabric of society, effectively, harm the economy of the United States, or otherwise bring down the government of the United States, or harm the government in some way, or the United States institution. Like, it's about how are you trying to affect the country writ large? And there isn't even a fragment of evidence that shows that Luigi Mangione had any intention to destroy the U.S. economy by murdering one guy. And he didn't destroy the economy by murdering one guy. Murdering one guy literally did nothing to the economy.
Didn't do anything to the healthcare industry either, by the way, for all those claims of it was going to change healthcare.
Unfortunately, the healthcare industry is still very terrible and very evil.
They're still denying claims like the one for my better half having to go to the ER several months ago and trying to charge me $3,000.
Don't get Mangione on me now. But
definitely not.
No. Here we go. But this is significant because the domestic terrorism charge was put in there out of political pressure. We knew this because they wanted to put this guy at the gallows, right? They wanted to, they wanted to make a show of this Mangione person. He'd become a weird kind of cult figure almost for a lot of people on the left, saying that, he's fighting back against, the uber wealthy or whatever, or these evil institutions. Regardless, this charge was thrown out because there was clearly no evidence of it, and the judge knew this, and the judge knew this was a BS charge. He's still going to be facing second-degree murder, which is also another curious thing because if you ask me at least, I think that if you look at even just the stuff that's available to the public, it looks like you should have a case for first-degree murder because of intent, because of what he inscribed on the bullet casings, because of what we understand to be his history. And so you would think that there is some sort of premeditation going on and intention, but he's not facing first-degree murder. He's facing second-degree murder. While it's curious that they went to second instead of first, it's not surprising because you want to pick the thing that you have the biggest chance of landing. So if you as the lawyer, if you as the prosecutor feel like I don't have enough evidence to show proof of first-degree murder, but I have plenty that shows that he killed the guy at the very least, so we'll go for second-degree. Because at the very least, it's a bona fide fact that he intentionally went up to this dude and shot him in the back, right? Without a doubt. But I think this is interesting when you look at Tyler Robinson and what he is going to be charged with. And this is particularly interesting because this is mired in politics and not in a good way. This is where my point's going to come out, in that politics being involved in the application of law is bad for all parties. And I'll tell you why. Tyler Robinson is being charged with, on top of other things, I think there's 7 or 8 charges. Most of them are small things like, I think there was 2 for obstruction of justice because he dropped the gun somewhere and he changed his clothes, which, yes, that is obstruction of justice. It's a very silly obstruction of justice, but yeah, sure, whatever. This is very normal for cases like this. You stack a bunch of, shit on top of each other to make the sentencing as strong as possible. But anyway, the murder specific charge, there's only one murder specific charge on here, and it's aggravated murder. It's not first, second, or third degree murder. It's aggravated murder. Now, you might be thinking, okay, what is aggravated murder and why are you concerned about it? Let me tell you why. Because first, second, and third degree murder have to do mostly with how you killed the person and why you killed a person, right? If you killed them directly, but it was kind of like, and you had everything you needed to kill someone, but you did not have a premeditated plan, like some manifesto said, I'm going to kill this dude, second degree murder, right? You killed the guy directly, but it could be argued that you just kind of decided to do it on a whim, right? First degree murder is I killed the dude and I wrote a book about how I was going to kill the dude and published it 3 weeks ago. Then I went to kill the guy. Premeditated, I had a plan out in my house. It was all laid out. You had a very specific plan and you came with intention. That's first degree murder. Much harder to prove. Most people will usually see second or third degree depending on the case. But Tyler Robinson is being charged with aggravated murder. Aggravated murder is very, very specific, and it's also very, very niche. I'm going to read you, this is from the Utah State Legislature. So this is aggravated murder as it will be applied in this specific case. So aggravated murder happens when the actor intentionally or knowingly causes the death of another individual under any of the following circumstances. The actor the actor committed homicide while confined in a jail or correctional institution. Okay, that's not true. 2, the actor committed homicide in a course of conduct that left 2 or more people dead. Also not true. 3, the actor knowingly created a great risk of death to another individual other than the deceased individual or actor. Also not really true. You can't argue that he knowingly created that because he targeted one person and one person literally sitting at a desk. It wasn't like the shooter who almost assassinated Trump, who quite literally, that missed bullet killed another person. That would have been something you could apply here, but not in this case. 4, the actor committed homicide in a scheme or course of conduct during which the actor also committed another felony, such as aggravated robbery, rape of a child, forced sodomy, other things, sexual abuse, whatever. There's a litany of things there, none of which apply here. 5, the actor committed homicide at the same time that they were committing a crime of abuse or desecration of a human dead body. That's very specific and literally written there. 6, the actor committed homicide for purpose of avoiding or preventing an arrest of an actor or another individual by a peace officer acting under color of legal authority. Or of the purpose of effecting the actor or another individual's escape from lawful custody. I wanted to read that one verbatim because I thought it was very funny. Also not applicable here. 7, the actor committed homicide for pecuniary gain.
What does pecuniary mean?
Pecuniary, a fancy word for monetary gain, basically. 8, the actor committed, engaged, or employed another person to commit homicide subject to an agreement, which is basically paying a hitman. There were no hitmans here, and this man is not a hitman that we know of. Or if the actor was previously committed of murder in any of the above ways, or regular murder, which is, of course, not true. Or if the actor was previously committed of a bunch of other things, none of which apply here. Or, let's see, where am I now? 11, the actor committed homicide for purposes of preventing a witness from testifying or providing evidence or doing anything else of that nature. Not true. 12, the deceased individual was a public official or a candidate for public office. Not true. 13, the deceased individual was on duty as in a verified position, or the homicide is based on said position, and that position is a peace officer, executive officer, a firefighter, a judge, or a security officer, none of which are true. I'm almost done here, but you're getting the point here. 14.
I think I am, yes.
Yeah, actor committed homicide by means of destructive device. Not true. Or weapon of mass destruction. No, we didn't throw a nuke at Charlie Kirk. The deceased individual was younger than 14. Nope. The actor dismembered the individual's body. Nope. The actor committed homicide in an especially heinous or cruel way. No, he shot him. That's like how most murder happens in America. And finally, 20 points later, the actor committed homicide by means of administration of a poison or any lethal substance administered in any lethal amount, dosage, or quantity. Now, I just listed off 20 specific reasons, 20 specific circumstances, any of which would need to have been proven true. Any of them, literally just one of those 20 things could be true. And then boom, this person can be charged with aggravated murder. Guess what? I just read you 20 things. None of them are true in this case. I don't need more evidence to show me that, because the evidence that we already have quite literally objects to all of these things. It is simply the most bogus and BS of charges I can think of. But there is one reason.
So you're saying he's going to get off?
No, he won't get off. But well, he could. Actually, he could. Here's the thing. When you're thinking like, okay, why did the county DA choose this very specific charge to place on Tyler Robinson and not second-degree murder, which would be literally, you can prove it right now, like, because of just the video by itself. Why do that? I will tell you why. There is one very big reason why. Something that both of us are vehemently against. And that is because the consequence of being charged or being sentenced with aggravated murder is the death penalty. That's why it's aggravated murder. Because if it is aggravated murder, they can kill him. And they want to do that. This is so overtly political that they want to kill this person for the murder of Charlie Kirk, because they want to, like, if they had their way, they would probably put him in a freaking, like, noose and hang him on a gallows, like it's Pirates of the Caribbean or some shit, you know, like, they would guillotine this dude. They want to make a statement here.
Oh, hoist the colors high.
They want to do this because they want to make a statement. But now, because of that, this is going to have a lot of legal ramifications for both Mr. Robinson as well as the community that in which this happened in. Because if they want to keep aggravated murder because of political reasons, it's not going to stick. And that's the only murder charge he has. Among the 8 or 7 or 8 charges there, it's the only one related to murder. If that doesn't stick, yeah, Jesse, he can walk free. He can walk free if they decide to do this, which is ridiculous because he's a murderer. He should not be walking free. We should be treating this the way we treat any legal situation like this, where you want to find the hardest charge that you can defend, that you are confident can stick. Luigi Mangione is not facing first-degree murder because they clearly know that that's going to be too hard to fight, so they're going for second because they want to do something to him, and they don't want to risk the chances of first-degree murder not going through and him getting a light sentence because of it. Because at the end of the day, like, when you look at the criminal justice system, when you see people getting off of murder, when you see your OJs and stuff like that, it's not like objective, you know? It's not an objective decision. It's a decision that is subjective, whether it's judge or jury, and that subjectivity comes from the ability of the lawyers involved to argue a case. If they are good at arguing a case, they win. If they are bad at arguing a case, they lose. That's the way court is. It's not just like this guy committed murder, boom, second-degree murder. It's like, is his lawyer very good? Maybe he'll get it down. Maybe he'll be able to knock it down. Maybe he'll be able to throw out the charge altogether. Which if I were a defense attorney, which I am not, but if I was working defense for Tyler Robinson, I would look at aggravated murder and be like, are you fucking kidding me? That would be literally the easiest thing to defend ever. I can get that thrown out. Now, what I hope happens is a judge sees this and says, dude, change this now, because this is ridiculous. Which happens most of the time. That's what happened with Luigi just now, with the domestic terrorism charge. So I hope a judge sees that and says, this is bullshit, come back with second or something like that, and then we'll have a case. They should be doing that. I fear that that may not happen now because of the politics involved in this case, because of who is involved, and the fact that we know that there is a deliberate and explicit goal by the government to put this guy away, and not just put him away, but have him convicted and sentenced to death. They want that, but as a result, it might backfire, and it might backfire in a way that is just not just dangerous for them because they didn't get their way and they're gonna get laughed at, but like a murderer might literally be able to be like, whew, that was a tough one, and then walk away. In the worst case, that could happen because of the intertwining of politics and law. There's a reason we have separation of branches of government. You know, when politics becomes involved in the legal justice system, this shit happens. And this should, as someone who is very nerdy about the law and stuff like that, this irritates me, it aggravates me, because this should just be a normal open and shut case. This guy committed murder, he was caught alive, and we can now prosecute him under penalty of law in a just and civil way.
And we should believe that it would be equally applied, right, regardless of political motive. And does anyone believe that? Like, does anyone believe that if somebody had shot, Joe Biden or God forbid, and anyone else, that if it was some sort of federal charge?
Listen, well, look at Luigi Mangione. Even though both were, both crimes were applauded by some on the left and demonized by all on the right. Look at the way both of those are going. Very different. Luigi Mangione is getting, despite the domestic terrorism thing that got thrown out, outside of that charge, the rest of the charges are very normal. Like, it's very typical of what you would find in any case that would be similar.
Yeah, because it was a normal Justice Department that actually charged him with these crimes, right? Like, it was a normal administration, and not and honestly, aggressively non-political Justice Department that was involved in that process, not the Trump Justice Department run by Pam Bondi, who thinks that she can arrest people for hate speech, specifically against right-wingers. First and foremost, thank you for sharing that, because I think that's fascinating and important. But you're right. Yeah, it's very clear that the death penalty thing is motivating all of this. And again, I am aggressively anti-death penalty. I think that it's almost always used as a weapon, like against specific people for a variety of reasons.
Like right now.
Whether that be on race or now on politics. And it's interesting because historically the death penalty was used as a means of it was very racist in the way it was applied, and that's part of my objection to it. Part of many reasons why I object to it. But race as a dividing factor in this country, while it still is very much a huge dividing factor, has taken a back seat to politics in a lot of ways, And so politics are now the main dividing force, and it's now being used in the legal system. Political views are a significant motivation in this administration and this Justice Department for whether or not you get prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Because I don't think any of us believe that if it was a right-wing person who had killed a left-wing activist, that the Trump Justice Department would be nearly as aggressive in trying to go after the death penalty with that person. And if you want evidence of that, let's just look to January 6th and the way that the president pardoned hundreds of people, including people who beat police officers with flagpoles and bats and clubs, and sprayed them with bear spray. Like, those people are walking free. They were pardoned by the President of the United States. So this belief in law and order being applied indiscriminately and equally on both sides from literally day one of this Trump administration has not been the case. And we should all be concerned. We should all be angry about that. And I sure as hell am. And yeah, you're right. These charges, it's stupid. One, it's just bad legal jurisprudence and practice, but it's also very troubling.
Right. Yeah. It's frustrating. It's a frustrating and quite frankly, disgusting perversion of the justice system that we have seen very explicitly by this administration and really no other one. It's been this one. Like, they're the ones that said, you belong to us now. And it frustrates me because I was talking to my wife about this recently. The part that hurts me, like that genuinely hurts me when I think about where this country is right now in respect to what the Trump administration is doing, is that there were certain elements of our country that I always felt were just like, they were, bound in blood, right? They were inalienable, right? I said this last week, right? Like, we had certain things that were inalienable that now are being trampled on. And it's like, this is like another quasi-example of that, where law should have been something that is apolitical. The law is the law. It's the easiest thing to understand because it's fucking clear. It's writing on script. You follow it and you're good. And now that's all being thrown into question. These things that were just like, I would look at them and be like, this is a founding idea that separates the United States from many other developed nations. What makes us so stable. But now that stability is crumbling because we have an administration who thinks that all of these building blocks, the foundation of our country, are his playthings, and he can twist them however he wants. So our foundation is gone, and the house is now crumbling because of it. That's the frustrating thing for me. It's the thing I cannot get over it. Because every week it feels like there's a new example of it, and I have to say it again. because it's just yet another example of that happening.
Yeah. Yeah, it absolutely is.
It's frustrating. It is truly,
when you're a star,
truly
they let you do it. Grab them by the principles. Anyway, so one quick thing I did want to touch upon. We were going to try and talk about this last week, and we didn't get to it. And I don't want to harp on it too much because I think many of us would love to move on from Joe Biden and the Biden-Harris administration, or honestly, many of us would rather go back. But it has been interesting, Tyler, in seeing Kamala Harris's new book that she has put out, that has it calls the decision to allow Biden to make the choice about whether to run for re-election or not. It calls that recklessness in hindsight, and it continues on to paint a picture of a not so rosy relationship between the Harris campaign or the vice presidential wing and the West Wing.
Oh, I love that show.
Yeah. Yeah. The glory days. But it certainly, throughout this book and the excerpts that I have read thus far, appears to paint a picture of a not-so-great relationship between Kamala Harris and Joe Biden throughout this. And she's certainly not holding back. For someone who is so loyal to Joe Biden to the point where she, refused to essentially distance herself from President Biden on The View, which was a gigantic mistake. She really is not, pulling her punches right now. She is coming out and essentially laying blame for what happened with Joe Biden. And again, I largely blame Biden for what's gone on and for Trump coming back to power. I do. I blame Biden. I blame the Biden family establishment. In reading the Jake Tapper book, that's what I have come to terms with, even as somebody who loves him. I know that you don't like to harp on that, so I won't harp on it going forward here. But the relationship between the president and vice president is really interesting because when we look back at him choosing Kamala Harris, I think that this is a lesson to be learned that we haven't talked much about, which is picking your vice president is both a political decision, of course, but it is also a governing decision. And I was very critical of the choice of Tim Walz last year by Kamala Harris, but I can't blame her now that I know what's going on, because I think she was largely looking at Walz and saying, Joe Biden picked me solely for political purpose. He didn't want a governing partner. I do actually want someone that I like. I do want to pick someone that I feel comfortable with. And I think that kind of pushed her to pick someone like Walz over someone like Josh Shapiro. I think there's other reasons as to why that happened. But in my head, I mean, if you look back at the relationship that Joe Biden had with Barack Obama, now he felt on several occasions that he had been dismissed, or he had been he held several grudges towards the Obamas. But he did also have an immense sense of loyalty, and Obama and him grew into, at least publicly, a very close relationship. There were a lot of the meme culture in the last couple months of the Obama administration about him and Joe Biden was very strong. There was a lot of nostalgia over them. There was also, Biden was given the Presidential Medal of Freedom by Obama in a moment that meant a great deal to him. Especially in the aftermath of losing his son Beau. But you would have thought that Biden would have been more progressive in the way that he engaged with Harris, but it was very clear that he never trusted her. And through this book, there's already excerpts that says that she certainly felt like she was being undermined and sidelined in any opportunity. She was given assignments that were specifically intended to make her fail, and put her as a scapegoat for various things. And this tracks, because Biden never let go. We know that Biden never fully let go of the attacks that Kamala Harris made on Biden, if you can remember, all the way back to 2019. But in that first debate for the Democratic nomination, first debate, Kamala Harris came out swinging at Joe Biden. She destroyed him in many ways. I mean, she essentially called him a racist. She said that he had promoted racist policies regarding busing back when she was a little kid, and she got that little girl was me. That was her campaign thing, and she landed some serious punches on Biden, and Biden took that very personally. He did not like that, but he chose her anyway. And largely because he put himself in a box, right? Biden put himself in a box where he felt like he had to choose a woman of color. He had said in the debate with Bernie Sanders, came out and said, I'm going to choose a woman as my nominee for the vice president. I thought that was a bad choice at the time to declare it there, because then it demeaned the choice, right? You should just have done it, right? Don't say you're going to do it for political points. Just do it, right? Just name a woman as your vice presidential nominee because she was the best candidate for the position, right? Not because you said you're going to name a woman, right? But anyway, that's beyond the point. And then it became clear that Biden needed a woman of color on the ticket. That was and so the finalists were all women of color. There was Keisha Lance Bottoms, which I said, again, was never going to be considered, because can you imagine Biden Bottoms on a bumper sticker? It's just never going to happen, sorry. There was Val Demings from Florida, but the three finalists, Stacey Abrams, get tossed around. They were all black women that were being considered. And he chose Kamala Harris because she was probably the safest choice at that period of time, but not because she was a governing partner. And I think this speaks to a problem. This speaks to a problem in that you have to choose somebody that both is a politically advantageous to you, and ideally somebody that may have inspired. The problem was he picked somebody who was immensely unpopular. Kamala Harris was not a popular politician when she was chosen to be the vice president. She was qualified and competent for the position, but she was not popular. And it's the same mistake that Hillary Clinton made in 2016. She didn't want to be overshadowed by her vice president, right? She did not, so she picked the most boring person, Tim Kaine. I know you all couldn't even remember. Most of you couldn't remember who it was until I just said his name. She picked Tim Kaine to be a running mate instead of a very, very good candidate. She could have chosen Joaquin Castro, who was very well-spoken, would have brought a level of experience. He was a cabinet secretary. He was Latino from Texas, but he was exciting. And Hillary Clinton did not want to be overshadowed in that situation. The vice presidential candidate doesn't just matter for winning this election. It also is who you're choosing to carry on the mantle. And for someone like Biden, who was trying to become president, he needed to pick somebody who had a real legitimate shot of being politically popular, setting themselves up for the future beyond that election. Because, the vice president is kind of the heir apparent in theory. If you look at the numbers right now, J.D. Vance is 53 points ahead of any other Republican candidate not named Donald Trump for the race for the presidential nomination in 2028. 53 points ahead of the next highest person. It's not even close. So the reality there is that Biden made a bad choice. And I don't say that because I dislike Kamala Harris. I say that because politically it wasn't a great choice. It was done for the wrong reasons. And it backfired in that he didn't trust her. He had no trust once they actually got into office to use her effectively. And then once it became clear that she was going to be the nominee, he hamstrung her at every opportunity. So, looking towards the next elections, the lessons that Democrats can figure out is we have to be better about choosing not just for our current administration, but who takes the reins afterwards. And And in general, candidates haven't been very good about that in recent years, of either party, we should be clear. But certainly the pick of Kamala Harris looks bad in hindsight, and clearly their relationship was not very good. So, thoughts on this, Tyler?
Not really. No, I think you said that well. I think, while I do agree, I'm like, why are we talking about this? I do think that the broader conversation about the implications to picking a VP and what that means is an important lesson to take. And especially as you can use this knowledge and we can take it when analyzing future VP picks by hopefully future presidents, knock on wood, we get those. And, we can kind of look at things with a bit more introspection and see, like, why was this person chosen, for what purpose, and what does this mean for the candidacy? And even if you're just a political nerd like us or someone who is actively involved in politics, you can use that to kind of help mold your strategies and such in the future. So, no, I think it's a very good, important thing to highlight and for people to take note of as we move on here. But I think we've rambled on long enough. How about we move on to our favorite segment, things we should all agree on. I'll go ahead and start if you don't mind. And my things we should all agree on is related to Charlie Kirk, and it's related to a very specific thing I've been seeing a lot of after his death. And it's this revisionist history that we're seeing with him, and why it upsets me. Some of the biggest arguments I've been seeing from the right, people are saying he's this great person, he's resting with Jesus in heaven, and like, we're going to carry your legacy, and what a kind-hearted man who all he cared about was his First Amendment right to free speech and honest debate and things like that. And I see people obviously saying that's bullshit. He was a terrible person. He was a racist and a misogynist and all these things. And the right condemning them, right? Are the people on the right condemning anyone from saying these things, saying, you can't say that, he's dead. He was a great person. How dare you? You're celebrating. And what I want to focus on is this differentiation. Being true about someone's colors, being true about someone's personality, and the kind of person they were, no matter if they're dead or not, that is not the same as celebrating their death. You can be sad that they're dying and still recognize and still be honest about the type of person, in this case, he was. Both things can be true. And I think there is actually an importance to not forgetting who someone was just because they're dead. I know people say you don't speak ill of the dead. And yeah, okay, I get that, kind of. But dying doesn't make you a great person. It doesn't wash you away of sin and make you this, bastion of innocence and goodness. Dying doesn't do that. I'm sorry. No matter how you died, whether you choked on a jelly bean or were shot in the neck in front of a crowd of thousands, doesn't matter. Death does not make you a saint. It doesn't. Your life makes you a saint. People should be thinking back at you, not in how you died, but how you lived. And what did you promote? And I do not see a problem with being honest about the type of person Charlie Kirk was. I denounce the murder. That's wholly wrong. Murder is wrong. And I wish he was not assassinated. I wish he were still alive today to debate people, to say a bunch of whatever other crap he wants to say. Yeah, I wish he were still alive today to do that, because that's his right. That should have been his right and his privilege to do so, as a human being and as a citizen of this country. But he's not. He's dead. And that's sad. But I am not allowing his death to revise my understanding of the type of person he was. It's not going to replace who I know this person to have been. And the truth is that he was not a great guy. He was not a great person. And it should be okay to recognize that, even though he's dead. It should be okay to talk about an honesty about the type of person he was, about the things he said, about women, about black people, about minorities, about liberals, about the Second Amendment, about empathy. Like, we should be allowed to talk about these things, denounce them, recognize that he said very vile things and was, for all intents and purposes, a vile person by virtue of promoting these vile thoughts and vile things. And even though he's dead and that sucks, that doesn't replace the person he was. That doesn't change the fact that he lived his life spewing quite a bit of hate. So my things we should all agree on is just that. Do not let the death of someone revise your history of who that person was. And you should remember that person as the entire picture, not just one aspect of it. That's all I got for you.
No, very nice. I mean, I've said to several people, like, just because I think that what happened to him was atrocious and that it was disgusting and it shouldn't have happened, doesn't mean that I'm going to excuse the things that he said that I really disliked and the things that he did that I found to be abhorrent. That doesn't mean that I don't feel empathy for him and for his family in particular, because, good God, no one deserves to be assassinated, and certainly no one deserves to have to watch their husband or their loved one or their parent. Mm-hmm. God, certainly children have no business watching their parents be assassinated, and those kids are going to have to live with this for the rest of their lives, right? It was on camera. Those kids are going to have to live with this literally for the rest of their lives, and they are traumatized by this. And that, in and of itself, should make us all condemn what happened. It's not funny. Those children did not deserve this. But he's a jerk. He was a jerk. Do I think that what he did and the way he engaged with people, do I wish that liberals would do that more often? Do I wish they would go into unfriendly territory and have those conversations more often? Sure, even if they were, people like, oh, it was all scripted, it was all carefully curated. Yeah, but he also debated a lot of liberals, a lot of real, actual, he was next week supposed to be debating one of the great progressive voices in the country, I believe actually here in New Hampshire, over in Dartmouth. Give the guy at least some credit for the fact that, yes, he did have uncomfortable conversations in a way that I wish liberals were more willing to do. But also the rhetoric that he engaged in. I mean, just as recently as the stuff he said about Taylor Swift in the aftermath of her getting engaged was really offensive and just dumb and pointlessly rude, pointlessly disgusting. I just don't understand. So it was really repulsive.
Saying you should bow to him now, come on now. Come
on.
And
he thought that was funny. He was trolling, and it's come on, man. Anyway, did not deserve to die, should still be here, should be able to do that in this society and not have to pay with your life. That's a ridiculous thing, and I believe in free speech, and I want us all to feel safe to express free speech. So, yeah, you make a fantastic point about this. The revisionist history when people die is wild. Mine, off the idea of what happens when you die, I think that something we should all agree on is that all faiths should be respected. Within reason, anything that's not promoting any sort of harm to anyone else, all faiths should be respected, including the lack of faith. And as a person who grew up in a Christian household and left the faith, and in fairness has watched my family leave the faith, all of us, over time, and that's probably due to watching my mother deal with mental illness. That's also due to seeing oppression towards LGBTQ members come from members of the church, including a pastor at my church growing up. That was not acceptable for us. And I'm not here to hate on religion. What I am here to actually advocate for is a respect for atheism. And I know that's a scary term to people. And I want to stress that, like, I think there are some things that people don't understand about what it means to be an atheist. One is that people say, oh, that means you think there's no consequences for anything that you do. No, it means I don't think I need to be afraid of what happens after I die to do the right thing, right? I believe that goodness exists on this earth and that it doesn't have to come from a higher power. I believe that humanity can choose to do the right thing, and that we don't sometimes, that we inherently sometimes do not do that. And that I strive to be a better person, not because I am afraid of going to hell or because I am trying to go to heaven. I strive to be a better person because I think that that makes the world a better place, and I have empathy for people around me. I also want us to kind of combat this mindset, because I get a lot of people who talk about, like, it's of great comfort to them, the idea that there will be a heaven afterwards. And I would not push back on that. I think that is, if that is your faith, by all means, I would allow you to that, and I would not question you on that. But I think some people don't get the idea that, like, I take great comfort in the idea that there is nothing after I pass. Because there is no question in my head. There is no concern of, like, what happens when my time here is done. That to me is actually very calming. I know what I'm working with. I live in this world, and I don't have to worry about the next one because I don't believe it exists. I also want to clarify that, like, I'm an atheist, which means my faith is that there is nothing. I know that sounds kind of confusing and concerning, but, like, agnosticism, which is my partner and many people in my life, agnosticism, and it's a term that I have associated with in the past, is generally I don't know. Maybe there's a higher power, maybe there isn't, but I don't know what that is. Or it could be, I believe in a higher power, but I don't know, what that might be, what that looks like. And I do tend to ascribe to the notion of I don't know, right? Like, I have no idea. And I don't personally think that anyone else does, and I don't mean that disrespectfully by any stretch of imagination, but I don't think that anyone else has an idea, as humans, of what is going on beyond our world.
No, I mean that's why it's called faith, right?
Right, of course.
It's just like it's a baseless belief.
Of course, and my faith, as such, eventually I have come to terms with the fact my faith is that there is nothing, and that brings me great comfort. And so when we talk about religion in this country, I'm not advocating for people to be atheists. I'm not advocating for you to be agnostics. I'm advocating for you to give the same sort of respect to my lack of belief that you expect me to give to your beliefs. And what I've seen in recent weeks from people, not in my family, but I guess my soon-to-be family, has been a lack of respect for agnosticism, atheism, etc., when they're getting respect for their belief systems. And that's very frustrating, and I think it's unfair. No one would ask you to compromise what you believe, but don't try and shove it down somebody's throat. Don't try and shame somebody for believing something different than you. Like, that's the worst of religion. The worst part of religion is insisting that anyone that doesn't believe what you believe is somehow dumb. I don't think that about religious people. I think that extreme religious people who promote violence, same way if there were atheists that are promoting violence, just anarchy and whatnot, I would condemn all of that. But the average person who finds comfort in their faith, who am I to judge you? Who am I to tell you that you're wrong? Who am I to tell you that I know better than you do? I believe something different than you do, and I respect that difference. But if you don't respect the fact that I don't believe that, that's not really practicing the values of Christianity as in the way that Christ would talk about, or for that matter, any other number of religions. It's not just a Christianity discussion. So that's my request of everyone, is to treat a lack of faith with the same respect that you do for a difference of faith, right? Because a lack of faith is faith. It's just faith in either nothingness or a faith in uncertainty. But either way, it's a faith in humanity. It is a belief that I have that humans can be better, not because we're afraid of what happens after we die, but because we're afraid of what happens while we live, right? And so that's what I believe. That's my personal opinions, and I would just encourage us all to be a little more tolerant and be a little more willing to defer on occasion to those of us who have other opinions or lack thereof. So I request that humbly, not angry per se, but just I think that it's very rare that people hear the atheist perspective on issues of religion, because generally it's just assumed that we don't have an opinion on religion. No, I do have an opinion, and it's not, all religion is dumb. That's not what I believe. I just believe something different. So that's what I got for you.
That was very well said, and my God says that you suck, so checkmate, atheist.
No. All right.
No. That was very well said, and I think it's very important to remember that. I see this a lot in Christians. They feel like there's a sense of entitlement that comes from having a certain religion, and that you feel because you feel so strongly in your belief, you want to ensure it's not just a massive part of your personality, if not your entire personality, but also constantly putting down people who aren't in your church as well, because you absorb that much of it as such a universal truth that you're like, anyone who doesn't believe this must be a sinner, a bigot or whatever. But it's frustrating to see that, because that's just so un-Christ-like to do. I've never seen greater hypocrisy than these people that are members of the Christian faith that feel like somehow it's justified and it's okay to demonize other people for their religions, to knock them down, to treat them as lesser, just because you have a very strong faith. That's just wrong. It goes against the teachings that you yourself apparently made your entire personality. Honestly, it's embarrassing for me to be Christian for a lot of those reasons. Seeing that, I'm like, I don't want to be associated with that shit. If I say I'm a Roman Catholic, then by virtue, I am with them. And that's embarrassing, frankly. It's embarrassing to me, because you're right. I mean, we should literally be respecting everyone equally, no matter what their faith or their political leaning is, for that matter. It's the same thing, right? It's like what they believe in, what they have faith in, is their business, not yours.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Well, on that note, both in politics and in religion and across the spectrum of issues, we would encourage you to take that same mindset. But thank you so much for listening, and we hope you've enjoyed this episode here. Follow us on Instagram. Continue to engage. I know I gave some people shit at the beginning of this for engaging. We appreciate it. I enjoy the conversations, and we want to hear your thoughts and your perspectives, because it fuels us on the podcast, gives us more to talk about, and it also offers us, kind of a difference of opinion that we can bring to you, our listeners. So thank you, as always, for joining us. And until next time, from Manchester, New Hampshire, I'm Jesse Saywell.
And from Los Angeles, California, my name is Tyler Eric.
And this has been Reunited States.
When the whole world has got you down, and there's no one else